Celia dragged the 40-pound sack of gunpowder a foot to her left, and then she looked at me across Mocha's courtyard in downtown L.A., waiting for my suggestion for the best place to begin her performance piece, her protest. I pointed to her left, to move one more foot to the left, out of the jagged shadow of Nancy Rubens' massive sculpture that loomed over the courtyard. Rubens had meticulously arranged airplane wings and propellers and rudders, all in the shape of an enormous bonsai tree. Or maybe it was a hawk, or even an airplane itself. That sculpture changed for me every time that I saw it. Celia, however, had a much more definitive shape in mind for her gunpowder. The act was not altogether spontaneous, no. We had staked out the courtyard on our previous visit, in between Celia's meetings with various principals of the Jago. Her most consistent patron, Hogan Jago, had finally done what he said he'd do. He'd open his own museum focused on time-based works. The Kramliks had their trust based in San Francisco, but Jago would build his own museum in what he called the true home of the moving image, Los Angeles. He was a strange man who often asked Celia, "Doesn't that one-up the Kramliks? This'll make the Kramliks look like a couple of dumb motherfuckers, right?" Celia wholeheartedly agreed each time. Yes, dumb motherfuckers, but each night after these meetings finished, she'd ask me, "What is his fucking deal with the Kramliks?" L.A. did seem like the place to build a museum, though. Both Celia and I were surprised to see all the museum and gallery spaces opening across the city. Yes, that was when Eli Broad had just built his own massive museum, with lines wrapping around the block. At the time, we had no idea anyone would line up for art in L.A. When we'd staked out the Mocha's courtyard, Celia asked, "Did we miss that this is where the culture has gone?" I held the spool of measuring tape, and she pulled its metal tip across the courtyard. I said, "It does seem exciting, though I wonder if that's because we've been in New York for too long." She let go of the tape, and it reeled back into my hand, snapping at my fingers. She said, "I don't know. Everything feels so new out here. And Hogan could have easily built this museum in New York, but he chose here." I asked, "Since when, Celia, do you consider Hogan Jago to be the harbinger of culture?" And she said, "Since he decided to buy boxers." Hogan Jago owned more original works by Celia than any other collector or institution. No, not that this was so difficult. Most people did not own more than one, particularly the pieces that had become quite hard to come by. The painted films of the 90s. Jago was probably the only collector in the world who owned more than one of them. And his new museum wasn't only showing these works, he was buying, finally, one of Celia's two monumental pieces. He planned to dedicate a permanent space in his museum to the boxing match. So Celia had been summoned to work out the logistics of the space with the curators and the building's architect. We had other matters to attend to as well. After we marked the last measurement around the airplane sculpture, I said, "I think we'll need about 40 pounds. 40 pounds? She asked. It was my best guess. She had planned this performance, or this protest, to coincide with a major exhibition opening at L.A. Mocha. The museum was about to present a career retrospective of Ana Mendieta's husband's work. Yes, museums, important museums, still gave him the honor. Celia needed a sack of gunpowder, but it was not so easy to buy gunpowder in Los Angeles. When we returned to L.A., hours before Carl Andre's opening at Mocha, we drove a rental car, a Porsche 911 convertible, because Celia wanted to blend in with the Hollywood stars. Her ironic joke, she said, but I believe she was merely indulging in a few extravagances for the first time ever, while she still could. We drove the Porsche to a gun shop in Culver City. From the outside, the shop looked nothing short of a criminal enterprise. No windows, chipped paint, chipped brick, falling brick, in a neighborhood that largely preyed upon people who needed to cash their paychecks or pawn their family heirlooms. Inside, I had never seen so much firepower in my life. Rifles lining the walls with barely an inch between them. Men handled these weapons, pointing them at imaginary targets, though at least one time I looked over and the barrel of a rifle pointed at me for a second as the man waved the gun from left to right. This didn't feel like the most dangerous part of Celia's project, though. The gunpowder was packaged in 1-pound plastic bottles. Celia was told she could only purchase 20 pounds. And I needed to buy the other 20 pounds. But how will we transport it if we're only allowed 20 pounds, I asked. Maybe we should only buy 20. The salesman behind the counter then asked, well, are you traveling together? But he asked this in a way that made clear he did not want to be told the real answer. A Cheshire grin that said, there are ways around this if you know how to play. And Celia immediately said, nope. We're not traveling together. I tried to say, am I staying in Culver City? But she nudged me with her elbow, and I knew that the man saw this, but he still did nothing. I wished that he had. In the parking lot, we had 40 little tubs of gunpowder, and Celia had no intention of bringing these tubs to Mocha. That wouldn't be a very good visual. So she opened the Porsche's tiny trunk to reveal the gunny sack she had purchased for the piece. She asked, so do you want to hold the bag or pour in the gunpowder? I asked, is there a third option? So I was left holding the bag while she opened 40 bottles of gunpowder and slowly poured them into the sack. When we were finished, the bag was so overstuffed that we could not close the Porsche's trunk. So we put the sack in the back seat and buckled it in. The three of us, Celia, me, and the sack, we drove back to Mocha with the top down for an hour on the 10, the wind blowing through our hair during the few moments we weren't stuck in traffic. Every time that we passed somebody smoking, I begged Celia to please change lanes in case the burning cigarette butt was flicked into Celia's gunny sack. She just coughed and laughed and called me uptight. After making it back to the courtyard in one piece, Celia shifted the large sack of gunpowder another inch across the ground. I stood at the opposite end of the courtyard with the drone I had purchased just that morning. I had never operated a drone, let alone this particular one. I barely had time to learn any of its controls. Still, I was more worried about how long it might take for a security guard to approach either of us. Somebody within the museum almost certainly had a computer screen beaming in live video of all corners of the complex. It would just be a matter of how often the screen focused on the courtyard, and whether the guard had glimpsed it at the exact same time. Not knowing our time constraints, Celia and I decided that our duties should begin simultaneously. I began recording from the drone, and Celia lifted the enormous sack onto her shoulder. It hung over her like a dead slug. Celia pulled out a small knife, and as soon as I saw the blade, I slowly made the drone take off. The camera on board recorded, though I have no idea if I captured any decent footage. The drone careened left and right. It scraped the ground before lifting off once more. Celia stabbed the bottom of the bag with the blade, and the gunpowder slowly poured out. She walked around the inner perimeter of the courtyard. She made the rounded silhouette of a head, a shoulder. She stretched out her line, making a left arm. Then she walked back to the center of the courtyard, creating the long torso and legs of Anna's body. All the while, the drone bobbed in the air like a drunken fly. And Celia made the opposite side of the body, the leg, the hips, the right arm. and she connected her long line of black powder so that Anna's entire silhouette was now fully formed. Celia had assumed she had no time for a fuse, and she was right. A security guard barreled out the doors toward her. Celia pulled out a matchbook, tore out a match, struck the book's sandpaper, and tossed the lit match onto the powder. But she missed. The security guard froze. He took a step back. He yelled, "Everyone off the courtyard!" The few bystanders who watched Celia pour the powder did not move. She had told them they would be safe as long as they stood 5 or more feet away. She pulled out another match, lit it, and tossed it to the ground. Again, she missed. The security guard lunged toward her, but she quickly lit another match, so the guard froze again. Celia slowly waved the match at him, taunting him. He stepped back. He yelled, "Everyone off the courtyard!" But again, nobody moved. My drone whirred around, bouncing off air as my fingers tried to maintain control of the joystick. The flame went out. Celia lit a 4th match. This time she did not throw it. She stood directly over her line of gunpowder, and she dropped the flame. She leaped at the first tiny explosion. The gunpowder popped and crackled. An orange and red flame sizzled at Celia's feet. Then the flame slowly moved in both directions. The line of gunpowder ignited inch by inch, popping and crackling, burning in a low flame all the way around the courtyard. Gray and black smoke began rising into the air. The drone for a moment was lost in the smoke. The 2 flames edged along the silhouette, curving around the arms, following the paths of the legs, and meeting again at the feet, where they slowly burnt out, leaving the burnt black lines behind them. The silhouette was complete. Some bystanders cheered. Maybe they knew it was for Ana Mendieta, maybe they did not. The security guard lunged once more towards Celia and grabbed her by the arm as if she was a child who'd gotten into mischief. He did not seem to know whether it was in his authority to detain Celia until the police arrived. She tried pulling away from the man. There was so much chaos, and I could not steady the drone throughout all of this. Finally, the drone zigged once more. Then it zagged once more. Then it sped headlong into Rubens' airplane sculpture. It got caught up there like a kite in a tree. The drone, even today, still has not been taken down from the sculpture. If you look closely, you can see it jammed between all of the airplane parts that spread across the air like wings. When everyone on the courtyard looked up to see the drone lodged into the sculpture, Celia yelled, "Run!" So I did, and so did she, tearing herself from the guard's grasp. My heart raced the entire 45-minute drive back to the Santa Monica Pier. Ana Maria and Margaret had spent the morning swirling in the pier's carnival rides. Celia, as you remember, had decided that the girls should avoid her performance at Mocha, that they should instead enjoy the day with you and their cousins. But I did not know if we'd make it back to see you at the pier. After we fled the museum, Celia did not stop coughing throughout the drive. I thought she was going to vomit. I asked her if I should bring her to the hospital. When she could speak, she'd only say, She was mad at me for asking. When we met you and the kids, I was obviously out of sorts. Not only from this protest, but because of Celia's condition. Mostly because of her condition. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to scare the kids, so I ended up just nervously pacing around, not saying anything to anyone. Margaret asked, "Is something wrong, Vicente?" But Celia had stopped her coughing. She blamed her red face on the heat, and she acted as if we'd just returned from nothing more than a mediocre exhibition in the galleries. Celia told her, "He's fine. Vicente's just tired of the traffic.